When I first found out that crab traps were once made of willow, I was so intrigued. But it was also a moment of course they were once made of willow. Because I'm a basket maker, I kind of thought of it like a crab basket, similar to how you have a mushroom basket to go collect mushrooms. A crab trap slash basket, you go to collect crabs. I became a little bit obsessed with the idea of a willow crab trap, and I did tons of research. I watched tons of videos of people on YouTube weaving and using willow crab traps. I found all these historical videos of people making crab traps and realized that the first step for me was to make a frame. I did some research into local regulations in the waters around me and also how big the mouth of the crab trap had to be, because that would determine how big the circle was on top of my frame. Essentially, it's just a big 4x4 with a circle on top, and I drilled some holes in the middle, and it has a foot. I later added a circle with more holes halfway down, but I'll show you that later in the video. I found a tutorial that seemed like reasonable for me to follow by a retired fisherman called David Harrison. One of the things I was warned about by some weaver friends was to not let my crab trap get too big. And even though I had that warning, my crab trap turned out huge. I think the main reason why my first crab trap turned out so huge was because I didn't fully secure down the bars, which are those kind of big upright pieces that come down. Because they weren't fully tied down, my crab trap expanded as I was binding my bars together. Typically a willow crab trap is woven with green willow, which is willow that's freshly harvested, but I made both of my crab traps with brown willow, which is willow that has been dried and then soaked. The willow sticks that are used to make a crab trap are much bigger than anything I'm used to working with, so it was really, really hard on my hands. I persevered though, and towards the end I was almost in tears multiple times. It turned out so huge, but I was honestly just so happy to have it finished and that I had a prototype to go try out. A few days later, I set the crab trap. I borrowed my friend's rowboat. I bought a kit from my local fishing store, which had a buoy, a rope, something to attach the rope to the crab trap, something to hold the bait, and a crab measurer to make sure that the crabs that I was harvesting were done so legally. Willow floats, so I took some big rocks and I put them inside of my crab trap to weigh it down. I came back 24 hours later, and to my extreme delight, I had caught a couple crabs.
No, there's a crab in it. There's a crab in it. I can see it.
And on it. There's some in there.
I honestly can't even explain how good this felt. A, that I had made something that caught these crabs, and B, there just was something that looked so right about seeing a crab being pulled out of the ocean in a beautiful handmade trap. It just really looked so ancient and so beautiful. Because we were new to crabbing, we measured all of our crabs to the Dungeness side, but we had actually only caught red rocks. Red rock crabs, you can take them a lot smaller. We just assumed they were all Dungeness. I don't really know why. But we were only able to take one of the red rocks at the Dungeness size, but I think in reality we could have taken most of the crabs if we were measuring them properly. So I had my prototype, which was my proof of concept, and I took a couple months break because it was honestly just really challenging and daunting to make a second one. But I eventually made my second crab trap. I added that second circle about halfway down the frame, which had holes that matched the holes on the upper circle, so that I could tie down each of the bars individually really, really tightly. My partner helped me make that initial first bend. We used a springform pan for it because the sizing seemed right, and he also helped me just secure them super, super tightly. This time around was a much better experience. I felt like I had control, and it was just really looking like what I wanted the crab trap to look like. For me, it's been so fun to learn about history and what people's lives used to look like through weaving. Just reading about those seasonal rhythms of the crab trap making in fishing villages like Cornwall was so fascinating to me. The crab traps were made in the winter, which is when you harvest willow, which is why they would use the green willow, and they would make them every winter and use them all that year. Because they were quite heavily used in salt water, they couldn't be used a second year. So that was their seasonal rhythm. Make the crab traps in the winter, use them all summer and fall, and then make more the next winter. Whole village economies were based off of crabs, and thus crab traps and growing willow. And some of these historical photos are just so beautiful to see, like all these crab traps going out in boats, and then all these baskets filled with crabs as they're brought up on shore. Now that I have 2 crab traps under my belt, I really look forward to making more. Thanks for watching.